What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today is the day I'm going to be taking you guys on a full rundown, review, walkthrough of my LEGO Star Wars The Clone Wars Fort Anaxes build. I'm going to be essentially combining 30 weeks of videos in a series, so I would assume this video is going to be pretty lengthy, although I will appreciate if you guys do stay through the entire video. The longer you watch it, the more likely it is to get recommended into other people's pages, so definitely stay tuned for the entire video. And also, if you guys haven't already, before we go ahead and get started, please go ahead and subscribe for more projects like this. We'll be starting up a brand new project on the channel coming very soon, so stay tuned for that as well. I think for this video, I'm probably just going to work from front to back of the MOC. Like I said, we're combining months and months of work. Now, that being said, if you guys do want to see the entire build series and the progress, I'll leave a link to my Building Anaxes in LEGO playlist. You can see every single week of videos from that single playlist, so if you want to go on a binge watching it from week 1 to week 30 in the finale, go ahead and do so. So first off, what is Fort Anaxes? Well, if you've watched season 7 of The Clone Wars on Disney Plus of the Bad Batch arc, it is essentially this giant base or forward operating base for the Republic during the Fort Anaxes and Battle of Anaxes battles. Hopefully some of the things here will look familiar to you, whether or not you were already familiar or not with Fort Anaxes from the Clone Wars, but I'm just going to get started. This video is going to be really long, so again, we're going to work from front all the way to the back. So the first front section here is a very nature-esque section. Essentially, I knew that the rest of the MOC was going to be a lot of man-made structures, lots of buildings and roads, so I wanted there to be a little bit of a nature scene. Now, I did actually have trees that I was going to use for the front here. I don't think it's scaled correctly, so literally all I did was just stick some dark bluish gray wedges, some bricks, some slopes, and you can see here we have some trans clear 1x2 tile. Now on Fort Anaxes, at least in the reference images I used before the series came out, there was a little lake that ran through the entire front section, so I wanted to include that. Obviously having this little nature area kind of breaks up the very, like I said, man-made structure areas of Fort Anaxes. So this was a very simple thing to do. I think this is the first 1 or 2 weeks of progress, was just working on this entire front section here. It's not the best detailed, like I said, it's a big MOC. This entire thing's gigantic, so I really didn't focus too much on spending too much money or parts in this front section, but I do think it was important to have a little nice breakup between the wall and the buildings and then the front nature section. Now, speaking of walls, I guess we'll talk about the next part here. You can see there is an entire wall section that wraps around the entirety of Fort Anaxes. Obviously, it's a fort, so there has to be some sort of wall preventing it from attack, and that's exactly what I did. Now, I did use a lot of reference images for this, although I got to admit, this wall design was pretty much just off the top of my head. It was essentially whatever looked right. So a couple of things here. This wall is about 15 or 16 bricks high, and you can see I basically alternated every single section, so a section will come out and then a section will go back in, and that's sort of how I did it for the rest of the entire MOC. So basically, I have these 1x2 garage bricks with some dark bluish gray bricks, separating those, making it look like a really nice pattern that I did really enjoy. On the bottom here, we have some slopes and some light bluish gray bricks, again, making like those columns, giving the wall a little bit of depth, making it come out too, which is nice. And then the top layer is just plated entirely with light bluish gray plates. So that pretty much wraps around the entire section. Now this right here, the wall sections on both sides, was by far one of the most time-consuming parts of the MOC build. I think it took maybe 4 or 5 weeks total to build this entire wall. That's because, believe it or not, in this one corner section, it's probably anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 pieces. I know, it sounds crazy. I didn't believe it at first, but that's the reality of it. Now, the walls do separate, which is nice. So you can see here, I have these walls separate and come out, which is nice. So whenever I do transport it to a convention, I'll be able to separate them, pack them up, and like that, I'll be able to get the MOC to a convention like safely and not breaking. So we have each wall separating into 3 sections, so 6 sections of wall total, 4 corner pieces, and then 2 of the middle ones. Like I said, this was one of the most time-consuming and most expensive parts of the MOC. These little 1x2 indented bricks, the garage bricks as most people call them, were about 10 to 12 cents each. And I think I ordered a lot of them. You guys can see how many. I mean, we have hundreds of them in just one side. So it was 1,000. I think it was maybe 4,000 or 5,000 of those bricks, just those 1x2 garage bricks inside this entire thing. And also huge thank you to a lot of people who actually donated a lot of these different parts right here. So you know who you are if you're watching this. Thank you so much. The bottom of the wall area is just plated and tiled. It's just essentially a man-made structure. So obviously you can lift it up. You can see all the dirty, sort of ugly interior and bottom to that, but obviously the outside is going to be tiled with light bluish gray tile, making it look clean, making it look seamlessly, and have it blend in with the nature and of course the inner workings of the fort. So the next part of the MOC to talk about are these two front guard towers right here. Again, these are something that are featured on Fort Anaxes. This was a little bit of an intricate design. I had the help of a couple of friends, but ultimately it came out really, really nice. Now I was actually planning on having two of them on the back side, but what ended up happening was the towers sort of blocked the view of this mountain, so I opted to not include those two. But we do have two towers right here which look really nice. These weren't too important, but I think it was actually crucial to capture the accuracy of Fort Anaxes. So each tower stands at about maybe 40 studs high, so it's definitely higher than usual. It is obviously not minifigure scale, so you know, take that as you will. Essentially, each side is just basically plates, tiles, and curved slopes. So you can see it achieves that like sort of circular smooth shape. Obviously it's Lego, so it's very hard to capture something like that. But we had two of these towers. Again, I debated on a fourth one. In fact, the fourth one starting is over there, but I just wanted to not include it. I didn't think it worked well with the rest of the mock, so that is for those two towers. Now, the next part I want to talk about is the main road. So first things off, I actually want to show you some footage of what this road looks like without any minifigures or vehicles. So you can see it's a very straightforward road. I use the technique called snot, which is studs not on top. Essentially, I just took bricks, laid them on its side, and went all the way throughout the entirety of the road. Now, there were a couple of really cool things here. First, you can see here we have some light bluish gray bricks that have the studs on the side. I essentially used these guys to actually put the clone troopers on, that way when I bump it to the table, they don't fall, which is nice. So obviously when it is set up, I don't have to keep going and reaching over, having it to try and like bring it up instead of it falling. So that was really important to have. I also did have these really cool yellow lines on the sides of the mock. Again, these are pretty accurate to Fort Anaxes. I essentially used a combination of regular and inverted mountain slopes in yellow color with some tiles and plates. Shout out to Jay for actually helping me with this design. And then I essentially had that entire thing go up and down. I think having like the yellow color definitely makes the road and overall just the fort pop, because obviously, you know, Lego clone bases are typically gray colors and sort of boring colors, so having like the red, which we'll get into, and the yellow definitely breaks it up a little bit and adds a nice touch to the road. And then the last thing are these 1x4 white bricks, which I use to essentially make some white dotted road lines. You guys, if you've ever been outside, no matter where you live, I'm sure you guys will see these on the street. So in terms of the actual things on the road, we have a couple of different setups here. The first things here are bark speeders. These are designed by Luca Press Projects, and again, you guys can find all the designers for all these vehicles down below. These are minifigure scale bark speeders, absolutely incredible designs. I am also borrowing some bark speeder troopers or bark pilots from my buddy Trevor, so thank you to Trevor and Luca for providing these guys for me. Essentially, these would be used as some sort of like forward reconnaissance vehicle for the Republic in the Clone Wars, so I opted to include 4 of them. A very, very nice design. Now, in terms of the larger road itself, we have 3 different columns of clone troopers, each with 20 troopers, so 60 total on the road. Again, we have those 3 sections with those light bluish gray bricks, which allow me to put the clones on them so they won't just fall over. So we have 60 of those guys, and the biggest thing you'll probably notice are these 2 beautiful ATTEs designed by David Buchholz. Absolutely incredible, beautiful models. I cannot be more excited and happy to have such beauties in my project. And when I first started this series, I knew that Anaxes had to have that one eye-catching thing, right? Whenever you build a mock in Lego, you have to make something about your mock that's going to catch the eye of anybody. It has to be like the main focus of your project, and I wanted that to be the main road. I wanted the main road to basically depict a giant column of clone troopers and just the grand army of the Republic moving out, battling the Separatists, and I think I definitely nailed that here in the project. We also have some really cool Easter eggs here. You can see we have 332nd troopers or Ahsoka troopers. These guys are just an Easter egg. They're not actually in Fort Anaxes, so don't worry about that. I know they're not accurate, but it was a little cool Easter egg I wanted to include for everybody right here. So again, this main road was very important to me. I wanted to make sure I put all my really cool things on this giant road that goes through the entire fort, and I think we did a phenomenal job with that. Now let's go ahead and start talking about some of the buildings here. The first thing, building on the right here when you enter the fort is going to be the medical bay. Now this was something I wanted to include from the get-go. I knew including buildings, especially with an interior, was going to be very important. I do want to thank Praetorian Guard for helping me design this round shape. This building was by far the most difficult for me. It was very hard for me to achieve these curvature areas, like having it be like a half circle. That was just mind-numbingly hard for me for some reason. So now if you look at reference images of Fort Anaxes, it's actually really cool that we ended up including this little E5 section of the top of the roof. It's basically snot lettering, so you can actually take the entire thing out, which does look super cool, but it adds such a really cool detail to the rest of the project because it really does stand out. I mean, when you look at the entire section here, you notice that long red stripe on the medical bay right there. So that's really cool. The entirety of the building is pretty much light bluish gray. There is an interior, which I will get into right now. You can easily access the interior by just lifting up this modular panel for the roof, which is nice, so I'll just set that aside. Now inside here we have a couple of things. First off, I have these big back the tank pieces that I got from Blaine's World Lego on Bricklink for super cheap, which was really nice. Obviously the medical bay has to have some form of back the tank, I figured in my mind, so definitely wanted to include those. We also have 4 different medical beds here. We have some of the Luke back the tank figures, which I just took off the hair and called them clones, which I think looks pretty well. We also have a really cool mini scene right here with an officer talking to a wounded clone, or like some sort of clone who has been through a lot of stuff, you know, in his battles, and then a couple of medical droids tending to all the wounded clones. We also have a really nice Camino Easter egg clone trooper right there, a Camino guard, which does look super cool. Now overall, the interior of this was actually really fun to design because it was just a fun thing. It was a nice little separation from the general vehicles and boring gray. So adding this interior was really important to me, especially for making this mock, and hope it did come out really, really nice. And again, if you want to go ahead and put back on the plate, you just take this modular piece. It's kind of hard to do with one hand with the camera, so I'm going to certainly try my best here. Then you just like pull back this part, snaps in pretty well, so that's how that comes together. Now the next building I'd like to discuss right now is going to be the 2 barracks that I've built for the clones. Now a barrack is essentially a place where the clones would sleep. If you guys are familiar with like the army or the military, this is where they just be bunking for the rest of the night. So I opted to include 2 of these buildings because there are actually 2 on Fort Anaxes. Now these were not actually barracks in the TV series. I designed this part before the series even came out, unfortunately, so this isn't entirely accurate, but it still looks really cool. Now this entire barrack was my design. It was actually really fun. This was kind of like my first time designing a building. So you could see in the front here we included those dark red little window pieces. That does actually look really accurate to Fort Anaxes as well. And then if you go towards the top of the roof here, it's mostly tiled off. You could see some really cool details and sort of with the dark bluish gray plates, wedges, and tiles, and some circle things right there, with some circular area and vents right there with that little red stripe. So this was a really fun barrack to build. There also is an interior, so let's go ahead and do that. Again, similar way to the medical bay, you could just sort of take off the roof right here, and I will put that to the side, and inside reveals a large barrack. Now we have my tier 1, my top 3 tier 1 donors right there. Thank you so much to you guys. And then my tier 2 donors, I actually forgot SWBrick75. I decided to represent him with Lego's most amazing phase 2 clone trooper. Again, I apologize, John. Hopefully this makes it up. But again, we have my 4 and I guess 7 total tier 1 or tier 2 sponsors and supporters right there, so thank you. Generally the interior of a barracks is pretty simple. It's just literally double bunk beds, which I kind of designed. It looks really nice, looks very simple obviously, so that came out really nice. We also do have some supply crates on the foots of each bed, so that looks really nice as well. You guys can see we have some clones who are supposed to be sleeping. There's no close-eyed clones, so unfortunately I couldn't make that happen, but you could see we have all their helmets right below them, so that's really cool. I also decided to include this mini scene of an officer yelling at some of the troopers. I just think, you know, whenever I think of a barrack, I think of like a group of soldiers just getting yelled at for doing stupid things, so I included that right there. We have an officer, and then I believe that is a CAC 501st Phase 2 trooper. I think I only had like 1 in my collection, so that was a nice little throw in right there. But overall, the medical bay was a really fun thing to design. Obviously, having another building with another interior, giving overall this mock a little bit more depth in life was a really cool feature. So that's basically it for the barracks. Again, if you just want to put back on the roof right here, it's actually harder because I have to make it line up perfectly with one hand, but it's no matter. Your boy's a savage. Boom. Now getting on into the other 2 structures here on the mock. Unfortunately, it's an area where I can't really get to my room too well. We essentially have 2 different installations that were designed and collaborated with both by me and Webslinger, so thank you to Webslinger for helping me design these things. On the left, we have a satellite array station. It is accurate to Fort Anaxes, at least in the reference images, again, that I used. Essentially, I thought of these as, you know, a communications array, obviously maintaining comms with the rest of the Republic Army. That way they can communicate and plan their attacks and stuff like that. So we just have 2 smaller size little satellite array stations, and then they are built up on a platform that uses some large light bluish gray slopes, a nice little staircase that leads up to the rest of them, and then of course we have 2 guys sort of just manning the array stations, making sure they're working properly, which is super cool. And then on the right here we have a shield generator for the entire base, again staying true to that concept art that I used. This is very reminiscent of the Hoth shield generator. In fact, it's pretty much the exact same thing, which was nice. This was a really nice design. It fit in really well, of course. Now, I did actually opt to make it dark bluish gray instead of light bluish gray. I just thought for some reason that dark bluish gray would look a little better in this instance. I think it would blend in a little less, obviously making it pop out. So that is why I did it in that color. It is a pretty large shield generator. It's actually much larger than I thought it was going to be, so it comes out a little more into the road, which I do have to fix eventually before a convention. But that kind of wraps up all the structures, all the buildings here on Anaxes. Very important pieces of the project. And actually, I guess the last quote-unquote structure to talk about is the mountain. This thing was very important from the get-go. It was important for me to have the audience, or have the viewer or spectator, accurately get a sense of scale for how big this space would be. Now guys, if I wanted to make this entire thing to scale, it would be at least double in length and maybe 1.5 times going wider. Obviously, I have no room for that, so I had to do something to make up for that fact, and I decided to include a really tall mountain. Now this mountain is roughly 65 bricks high, which doesn't really sound too much, but it was a lot. Now this mountain was very different from the normal ones that I've been used to doing, because it's a very clean cut mountain. What I mean by that is, if you basically took a laser and cut right down through rock, this is what it would look like. It's not like your typical crate or Kessel rock work where it's basically just stacking slopes. It's a little bit of a different technique, which is actually why, partly why I chose to do this entire project, because that would test me in a new way that I haven't done anything before. So little cool things about the mountain. Obviously, we have 2 windows right here with some black bricks behind it. That's to give it the illusion that there is a window back there. Like I said, that's not transparent. You don't see a clone behind there, because that would just throw off this entire thing. So that's why there's no interior, if you will, because it would just looked really weird given the size. I also did decide to include some really cool details and cracks and crevices. We have one really long crack in the middle of the entire mountain wall with some minor ones going on the side. Again, adding a more aesthetic, more depth to this was important. Then I also worked really hard to make it look like this mountain was layered, and what I mean by that is it came out and protruded out more, which again, give it more depth. I've probably said the word depth like 8,000 times in this video, but it was important, because the more you give it, I obviously have like one part right here that pushes the mountain back with this little crevice area right here, but then I have this layer which comes out more, so it does give it a little more depth and a little more angle. So that looks really nice. And then below here we have the light bluish gray mountain door. Again, not to scale. There was only really a couple of details I wanted to include that were important, and then having some really small details here on the sides. We're using some garage bricks, which I used in my fort wall. Right there I had some extras and some 1x4 modified plates. So that's kind of a quick rundown of the mountain, and admittedly it wasn't really that intricate. It's literally just stacking bricks in different layers, obviously adding some cool details. I'd say the toughest part was sort of working with these cracks, because there's a lot of plates that go into something like this, but other than that, that's sort of the mountain. That's kind of the deal with that base. Now, essentially, in theory, in your imagination, there would be an entire interior to this mountain. There would be ARC 170s, there would be headhunters, more ATTEs, a giant hangar. Unfortunately, like I said, I don't have enough room for that, so that's going to have to be left to your imagination. But hopefully, and this, like I said, was the main goal of this mountain, it gives you a sense of scale. It doesn't throw everything off. It makes you think, wow, the mountain's supposed to be that big, so this is all supposed to be really dwarfed in comparison to that mountain. So now that we have all the structures covered in this video, let's start talking about the minifigures. Now, in total, there are over 200 minifigures in this MOC, which doesn't sound like a lot, at least to me, but it is a lot, and there are a ton of them. I actually did a full showcase of discussing every single minifigure in this MOC. I'll leave a card on your screen right now. Definitely go check that out after this video. It's really insightful as to how many different types of clones there are in this project. Now, really quickly, the most of them were just these normal Phase 2 clone troopers. I used the Phase 1 bodies from the Jedi Clone Battle Pack and used some Aerolite Phase 2 helmets, which looked really nice. There are some really cool different mini scenes. By far, my favorite has to be the scene right here. You guys can see we have the Bad Batch supplied by Minifigs for You. Then we have Cody, Captain Rex, Anakin, Mace Windu, and then a Republic officer right there, all discussing their plans. Now, this was sort of an homage to what happened in the episode when the Bad Batch lands, and they were greeted by all these different people like Captain Rex and everyone like that. So, obviously, I don't have a Bad Batch shuttle nor the room to put it, so this was like the little Easter egg homage area that I wanted to include right here. Now, the back of the medical bay was a challenge. I didn't really know what to put here, so I decided to just put a whole bunch of supplies and stuff like that. First things first, we do have a little cool supply crate with a bunch of weapons and armament. We have two 12th Airborne troopers who are unsupplying that crate. We also have some really cool Rebel transport speeder, or I guess they would be Republic transport speeders, designed by my buddy Daniel, or Lego clone. Again, all those links are going to be down below in the description. Moving forward towards the landing pad, which is one of my favorite areas of the MOC, we have two of the same gunships here, designed once again by David Buchholz. Both this design and that design are available on BrickVault, so huge thank you to both BrickVault and David for actually allowing me to use these for free. For the first mini scenes here, we have a Republic officer who is essentially giving a mission briefing to a whole bunch of troopers getting ready to mobilize and move out, and the same thing is right over here too. We have an Imperial officer sort of giving the rundown to the 501st Legion, making sure that they are up to date and everything like that. Now, there are some really cool lights here I'm going to show you guys at the end of the video, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. You're not going to want to miss it. And then if you look towards the other side of the MOC in terms of minifigures, we just have some Phase 2 troopers sort of stationed in different areas. We have them guarding the barracks, we have them guarding the satellite and shield generators. We have a couple of columns and groups of Phase 2 troopers who are frantically running to the rescue and getting ready to move out with the rest of their troops, which is nice. We also have a really large column of troopers here who are supposed to be coming out of the fort wall after it's closed, which does look kind of cool. We also have a beautiful AV7 cannon designed by Mason, or M5 build, with a really nice missile cart right there. Again, go check that out. This is a really cool addition to the MOC because it sort of blended in with the rest of the vehicles. And the AV7 cannon is one of the coolest things, in my opinion, from the Clone Wars, and a beautiful minifigure scale version of it is right here, so definitely go check it out. There are instructions too, so go ahead and contact Mason if you want to go pick this up for yourself. And then the last vehicle I didn't mention yet are the 501st ATRTs designed by Dave's Customs. As you guys can tell, I am not a vehicle designer. I just cannot build vehicles. That's why I went with so many of these beautiful designs for ATRTs. We have some 501st troopers with the new CAC ARF helmet, which looks amazing. Actually really surprised, no, not surprised, but just pleased with the overall design of that one. So I guess now's the time I'll show you one of my favorite parts of the MOC, and that is this entire landing pad lit up. So there are actually areas underneath the platforms here that have the lights and all that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna quickly cut the video, turn on these lights, and show you guys what exactly it looks like in dark, which looks super cool. So here is what the gunship landing pad looks like with all of the lights. As you guys can see here, I've hidden some of the light up bricks from Lego and Brick Stuff, who was actually a sponsor of the build, so huge thank you to Brick Stuff for helping me get these lights in the project for a significant discount. I was able to put some lights here. I unfortunately wasn't able to do a lot of lights for the entirety of the MOC. I might be able to do it by the time Brick Fair comes around, or maybe I can even add it in another part of the installment of the series at some point down the road. I really do want to do that, but as far as lights go for now, we have a couple of different lights here on the landing pads. Basically on each corner of the landing pad right there, we have some of the Lego lights, and then the Brick Stuff lights are these guys right here that are on the towers, sort of shining down their lights onto the gunships, which I thought looked really nice. And again, it's something I do want to include in the rest of the project, so maybe I can do that eventually. But it was just really nice to add a really cool section of light up bricks. It's nothing too intricate. I'm still sort of new to lights. I mean, I've done them before, but most of them have been kits, so I'm trying to experiment with doing a more sort of original light up job with the MOC. But this is a really cool section. I do, like I said, want to include more, but this was a really nice section to add. Hope you guys do enjoy this little area of the lights too. I think it came out really nice. I'm trying to give you the best angle that I could possibly give you here. Unfortunately, it is still daytime out, so it might be a little bit lighter than I would like, but you get the idea just of the lights and general things like that. But with that being said, guys, that's gonna wrap up Anaxes. That is the full review, all 30 weeks in one video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope that this video was insightful into the design of everything that I included in this project. If you guys have any questions, please comment them down below. I'm sure there's a lot of things that I ended up missing just because of the sheer size of this project, but this is by far my favorite MOC. I think this MOC tested me in ways that the other ones in previous projects haven't, and I'm incredibly happy with how it's turned out, with everything going on. So thank you everyone for supporting me along this journey. Like I said, hopefully we can get some more Brick Stuff lights in here. Maybe in a month or two I can give an update video about this entire thing with lights. That would be really cool. But with all that being said, guys, if you did like the video, be sure to drop a like down below. Let's try to hit like 400 likes on the video. I would be so happy with that. And of course, guys, if you haven't already, definitely consider subscribing to the channel. We got a lot more of these videos, a lot more of these projects coming up, and the next project hasn't been decided yet, but it's coming very soon, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Hope you stay safe, stay healthy during these weird times, and I'll see you guys later. Take it easy. Peace.